Oh, Oaksy, you ever have one of those moments where your whole world just flips, where something so absurd, so unfair, happens that you actually laugh before you cry? Yeah, that was me, the day I opened a letter saying I owed 30,000 to a homeowners association for a cabin they didn't even have authority over. And the craziest part, that letter set off a chain of events that would shake an entire HOA board to its core and change my life forever. It was a quiet Tuesday morning, the kind that smells like coffee and pine needles. My little cabin sat tucked away on the edge of the woods, just far enough from town that the sounds of the city faded into birdsong and wind. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every beam, every window, every nail. I'd worked for years to make that cabin my retreat, my piece of peace, so when I found a thick envelope stuffed in my rusted mailbox that morning, I didn't think much of it. Bills, maybe. A catalog, but when I saw the words, "Nut IC, OFIOLT on," in bold at the top, my stomach dropped like a stone. At first I thought it was a mistake. The letter was from the Lakewood Ridge Homeowners Association, a place 3 miles down the road. It listed a long string of violations: unauthorized construction, failure to comply with property aesthetic standards, unapproved exterior modifications. Then came the kicker, or 30,000 in fines. I actually laughed out loud. This has to be a joke, I muttered, tossing it on the table. My property wasn't part of any HOA. I'd made sure of that when I bought it. Freedom was the point. No committees, no rules about mailbox colors or lawn heights. Just me and the trees. But then the letters kept coming, one after another. The fines increased. Then came threats of legal action. I tried calling their office. No one picked up. I emailed. No response. When I finally drove down to their little office building, the receptionist looked at me like I was a stray dog that wandered in from the highway. "You're in our jurisdiction," she said flatly. "No, I'm not," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "My cabin's outside your boundaries. I've got the county maps, the deed, everything." She shrugged. "Our records say otherwise." That's when I realized something. This wasn't a mistake, it was something worse. Over the next week, I tried everything. County records, zoning maps, even my old real estate contract. Every single one confirmed the same thing: Lakewood Ridge HOA had no authority over my land. I even met with my neighbor, Old Man Harris, who'd lived in the area for 40 years. "They've been creeping their borders," he said, shaking his head. "Bought off some folks at the county office years ago. Started claiming land that wasn't theirs. Most folks just pay the fines to avoid the hassle. But not me." That night, I sat by my fireplace, letter in hand, and felt something inside me harden. For years, I'd been quiet, the type to keep to myself and avoid trouble. But there comes a point where silence feels like surrender. I wasn't going to pay them a dime. I gathered every piece of evidence: maps, letters, dated photos, receipts from when I built the cabin, and drove to the county courthouse. The clerk there was a kind woman named Rachel, who took one look at my stack of papers and frowned. "This isn't the first complaint we've had about Lakewood Ridge," she said softly. "But no one's taken them this far before." That's when it hit me. Maybe I wasn't just fighting for my cabin. Maybe I was standing up for everyone they'd bullied and scared into paying. The sun was setting when I left the courthouse, the sky painted in streaks of orange and violet. I looked back at that folded letter on the passenger seat, the one that started it all, and I smiled for the first time that week. They thought they could scare me. They thought they could take what wasn't theirs. But they were about to find out something they didn't expect. I wasn't just some guy with a cabin. I was the wrong person to mess with. And the next chapter of this story, that's when the HOA's board learned exactly how it feels to be held accountable. The first real battle didn't happen in court. It happened in my own head. I kept replaying the same thoughts. What if they're right? What if they actually find a way to take everything? I wasn't rich. I wasn't powerful. I was just a man with a cabin, a mortgage, and a stubborn sense of fairness that refused to die. But the more I thought about it, the more that fear started turning into something else. A quiet fire. I called a local attorney the next morning, Sarah Delgado, a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer with a reputation for taking on corporate bullies. She listened carefully as I explained everything, flipping through the letters I'd brought. Halfway through, she raised an eyebrow. "They fined you $30,000. "Yeah. "For being outside their imaginary fence." She chuckled under her breath. "This is going to be fun." That was the moment things started to shift. Sarah filed a formal motion with the county to challenge the HOA's claim of jurisdiction. Within days, it became clear that this wasn't just a mix-up. It was a pattern. We found 5 other property owners in the area who'd received similar letters. Most had caved under pressure. One woman, a widow named Carol, had even taken out a loan to pay them off. Every story I heard made me angrier and more determined. Soon, the story caught wind on social media. A local reporter reached out, then a news station. They called it the cabin case. And with every broadcast, every headline, more people started paying attention. The HOA board, once so confident in their silence, suddenly had a spotlight on them. Then came the hearing. The board president, a man named Richard Kane, was exactly what I expected. Polished smile, expensive suit, and the arrogance of someone who'd gotten away with too much for too long. He stood up in front of the county magistrate, waving documents like confetti. "Our maps clearly indicate that Mr. Miller's cabin falls within our jurisdiction." Sarah didn't flinch. "Your maps," she said calmly, "were redrawn 2 years after my client purchased his land. And without county approval." The room went quiet. I'll never forget Richard's face when she laid out the original county zoning map. The real one, signed and sealed years before. My property was clearly outside their borders. Every word of his argument unraveled right there, like a loose thread pulled from an expensive suit. But Sarah wasn't done. She presented a series of emails we'd obtained through discovery. Ones that showed the HOA board knew they were overstepping. They'd even joked about bringing in more land to boost dues. The magistrate leaned back in his chair. "So, Mr. Kane," he said slowly, "you're admitting your association has been collecting fees from properties not legally under your jurisdiction." You could have heard a pin drop. When the ruling came down 2 weeks later, I was sitting on my porch, the smell of rain still fresh in the air. Sarah called. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the smile behind it. "You won," she said. "Not only that, the court's ordering restitution for everyone they find illegally. And the county's investigating the board for fraud." I didn't speak for a moment. My throat tightened, and for a second, all I could do was look out at the trees swaying in the wind. That little cabin, the one they'd tried to claim, had become the place where something much bigger began. In the weeks that followed, Lakewood Ridge's board fell apart. The president resigned, 2 members were charged, and the county redrew the maps to make sure nothing like that could happen again. Carol got her money back, plus damages. The others did too. As for me, I didn't keep the settlement money they offered. I used it to start something new. A small non-profit called Freehold, helping homeowners fight back against unfair HOA practices. I figured if one cabin in the woods could stand up to a corrupt system, maybe others could too. And sometimes, when the wind rustles through the pines just right, I can still hear that first letter being torn open. The one that started it all. They tried to take my peace, my freedom, and my home. But in the end, they gave me something better. A voice. So if you ever find yourself staring down something that feels too big, too unfair, too powerful, remember this. You don't need to be loud to make a difference. You just need to stand your ground. Because sometimes, one person's fight can shake an entire mountain.